You're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Will. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Tuesday, October 28th, 2025 council meeting at 6:30. We'll start with disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing there's none, staff reports or committee reports, sorry. Councillor Flynn.
None for me.
Councillor Shelton.
None for me either.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Kirky.
Yes, I do. Source water protection. Sit here. So, the increase in transfer payments, sorry, no, not increase, a decrease in transfer payments by 30% for lack of having our mandatory reports done in time. So we're working on that. That's North Bay Manawa Conservation Authority. And just, I don't know if anybody saw in the paper, our chair is no longer our
Yes.
chair.
Yes.
Okay, I haven't got the update on what happened there, so I don't know what's gonna happen. So the new agreement signed April 24th and another one April 27th gives us the authority under the act to have source protection, a source protection program. So that's the new, under the new act, because we had to redo it. And a note, Walkerton is 25 years old as on October 8th.
That's hard to believe. That's 25 years
Yeah.
gone by.
So, the transfer payments that we didn't receive amounted to $69,000 for the Conservation Authority. And so it's not due to not meeting all of our reporting. So now we have a new manager who took the time to reach out to other conservation authorities, and she's getting help to do these. They've been putting people in to do that job who have other jobs inside of, you know, like our biologist was doing them. She's supposed to be doing water sampling. So you pick one, either do field work or, and one of their reasonings was we don't have a full-time manager. We have an interim manager who's at our biologist, kept stepping up to the plate every time the manager either quit or got fired or whatever. Anyway, that's we're hoping the circus is over. We are. So anyway, so she's reached out to other authorities, larger authorities that have staff dedicated to these reports. And so she's got a couple of the reports done, completed and accepted now. So we're good. And that's it's been going on for 2 years. So it's kind of, you know, so there is a chance that we could get some of that funding back, but they're not sure. So, and if we produce good results, we might get some of it back, but we're not holding our breath. Yeah, because we had one person filling 3 roles for the first part of the year, and it wasn't fully reported because of high management turnover issues. So that's that for that. Police services, Zone 1A meeting will be sometime in November. I missed the meeting last night. They didn't have quorum, unfortunately. So they went through some of the policing equipment that we use. For instance, a new Tahoe, before it even hits the road, $147,000. Give you an idea why we have bills like $27,000 a month for policing.
Yes.
I had a little
One
chat.
vehicle.
One vehicle. And I had a chat with Kramer tonight before I left the house. So there will be a meeting in November, the date to be decided, but the Zone 1A meeting is later on in November as well. So that's the whole zone. That's everybody out of the North Bay region. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Kirky. I really don't have anything. I did get an email from Water Sources. I don't know, you probably got it, John Paul. We're in a level 2, which isn't a crisis, but a level 3 is. And if we soon don't get rain, we're going into a level 3, which is a major drought. So
I noticed it, so
yeah.
A little bit of rain helped.
I noticed
Yeah, yeah,
the hydro pond is shut down, like there's no water flowing out of it.
no. And Lake Nipissing, like I could walk almost the end of my dock and not get my knees wet right now. So it's so fast, and you must be seeing that.
We had some concerns with people's wells.
Yes,
Yeah.
Wow. yeah.
It's because it's been so dry this
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will move on. Thank you. So I need a mover and a seconder. That the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 7th, 2025 be adopted as published. All in favor? And we'll move on. We're going to have a presentation from Urban Re, from Benjamin for our draft 2025 asset management plan. And thank you very much, Benjamin, for doing this for us, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for the invitation to come speak with you about the township's asset management plan. My name is Benjamin. I'm the principal at Urban Re. We are a consulting firm based in Ottawa that specializes in municipal infrastructure management. And we've been working with members of the township staff on the creation of this asset management plan, which is required by regulation. And I'd like to walk you through some of the highlights of it this evening. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll work our way through a presentation. And I hope that's coming through.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to start off with a quick introduction to asset management and why municipalities across the province are investing in asset management plans right now. We'll then look at an overview of the township's assets and see what the township owns. And then we'll dive into details onto each of the asset classes covered by the asset management plan. So that's roads, bridges and culverts, facilities and land improvements, and fleet and equipment. Once we've had a look into all of the assets covered by the plan, we'll review the financial strategy and the next steps that are prepared in the presented in the asset management plan. In Ontario, asset management is regulated. There is a regulation that was passed back in 2017 that requires all municipalities in Ontario to produce an updated asset management plan every 5 years. So Nipissing had produced one previously. This is an update and expansion on that plan that now covers all of the major capital assets that the township owns and looks at a 10-year outlook for what the requirements are going to be to invest in those assets. By regulation, the asset management plan needs to include asset information, a summary of what the township owns, the age of those assets, the condition that they're in, and an estimate for the replacement cost if you had to buy those assets new. It also calls for levels of service. What is the service that's provided by each of those assets? For example, safe roadways or facilities that support the services that the township requires. So we need to report on what those services are that are currently offered and what the township proposes to offer as a sustainable level of service for the long term. We then look into life cycle activities for each of the asset classes. So what does the township need to be investing in to keep those assets running, to make sure that they're in a reasonable state of repair and that services is being reliably delivered to the public? And we look at a 10-year planning timeframe for those life cycle activities. And then the last part is to prepare a financial strategy where we estimate what the costs are going to be, what the township's capital needs are going to be, and the township's capability to pay for all of those requirements to maintain all of the assets that they own. It's important to remember that the focus in the regulation is on incremental improvements. Townships are bringing on more and more of this as time goes. And really the goal of it is to help municipalities like Nipissing move towards a point where they have a pretty good sense of what they own, what the financial responsibilities are going to be, and a good sense of what their obligations are for the next 10 years. So with that said, we estimate, reviewing financial records and various studies and works that have been done by the township in recent years, we estimate that the current replacement value of all of the township's assets together is just shy of $50 million. And most of that is in the township's roads. So about 32 out of that $50 million is just in the value of the roads themselves. Bridges and culverts are your second most valuable asset, adding up to just shy of $8 million in value in those assets. And then your facilities and land improvements at $6.8 million, and your fleet and equipment, which includes your fire vehicles and your public works vehicles, valued at about $3.2 million, $3.18 million if they were to be replaced today. Across all of the assets that the township owns, the average age is about 25 years. So, some pretty well-established assets that have been in the township for a long time, especially higher value ones that would pull that weighted average back. Essentially, the context is that the community has historic assets, but the township is also growing. Population's been rising, even if it's not rising at quite the same rate as the province. So there are a lot of assets in place that have been in place for a long time to serve a community that is growing slightly. But we sort of acknowledge that context getting into the asset management plan so we can really think about the community that's being served by these assets. We also note in the introduction to the report that there are risks of wildland fires, interface fires, and flooding. That's common for a lot of municipalities in the part of Ontario where you are. And it's just an important piece of context to consider in terms of the overall service and risk picture of the municipality. In terms of roads, by far the greatest extent of the municipality's road network is gravel roads. There are some surface treated roads and a short segment of asphalt road by the township office and school. A road needs assessment was completed for the township in 2023 by DM Wills, which evaluated the condition of all of the different roads across the municipality, considered priority projects for rehabilitation, and developed a bit of a financial outlook regarding roads for what the township needs to be reinvesting to maintain its road network. Based on that report, the total road network needs an average annual reinvestment of about $475,000 every year in order to maintain service quality at approximately the level where it is currently. Within the road needs assessment, there were some identification of roads that need special attention, but it was the opinion of DM Wills that those roads could get attention within that budget envelope. So the priority would be to be maintaining the road network and then allocate a portion of that budget towards rehabilitating and renewing certain priority road segments. And we've identified those in the asset management plan as well. We should note that the township's road maintenance strategy is not to spend all of this funding every single year, but to put some funds in reserve so that you can do greater projects every other year. And so this is an average annual amount, but really it will vary depending on the projects that get done and the amount that gets put into reserve. On the bridges and culverts side, I believe the township owns 12 bridges. I'm sorry, I didn't note it on the slide, 12 bridges and culverts. A greater number of bridges were estimated to be in fair to poor to very poor condition, while the culverts were mixed in condition from very good to very poor. 2 culverts are brand new this year, so obviously considered to be in very good condition. The township completed and is required to complete a bridge and culvert condition assessment every 2 years, and that did find a number of the assets to be in fair, poor, and very poor condition. Notably among those is the Hummel Bridge. I believe everyone here this evening is aware of the Hummel Bridge being closed to traffic and the measures that have been put in place to accommodate the residents affected by that. It is an issue of concern, and it's noted in the asset management plan. There's also the Bear Creek Culvert, which saw emergency repairs in 2024. And although those repairs were completed, the bridge and culvert condition assessment report does recommend going forward with the replacement of that asset in the near term. There's also the 7th Concession Bridge, or the Ponderosa Bridge, which has load restrictions in place, and projects were identified that would be able to eliminate those road restrictions and open up the use of that bridge through some rehabilitation works. In terms of levels of service, as is required for each of the asset classes, the aim in the asset management plan, as discussed by staff, would be to restore safe, open, and unrestricted bridges and culverts. The exact wording of that is in the plan itself. A few assets of concern, as we identified on the previous page, the Bear Creek Culvert, it is a critical asset. It provides service to a portion of the community that doesn't have an alternate means of egress. So there is discussion on the need to replace that asset with a bridge. I believe that the province maintains a bridge on the highway that also crosses Bear Creek. And so that is an asset that requires attention and is the top priority asset for major capital works in the bridge and culverts category. The Hummel Bridge and the Hart Road culverts costs may be shared. For the purpose of the asset management plan, we've put down an estimate of the township's contribution to each of those projects. But of course, all of the actual financial costs are to be validated when those projects go forward. So the point of this is to get a sense of the scale and magnitude of the different obligations that the township has, and not necessarily to do a detailed study of each individual project. We want to get a sense of it all across all of the obligations that the township has. Essentially, there are a number of priority projects that have been identified through the bridge and culvert studies that the township has completed that total up to $6.439 million over the next 5 years. If the township is able to raise those funds or contribute those funds directly, that would address those major needs. But going forward, it would be prudent to continue putting money into a bridge reserve so that you have funds available to pay for the costs of repairs and rehabilitation of your bridge and culvert assets when those projects come online. Because every asset has a life cycle, it requires reinvestment at a certain point down the road. So even if when we don't have projects that are necessarily visible in the next few years, it's really good to start building reserves towards having funds available for when these major projects occur. On the facilities and land improvements side, again, the township completed a study evaluating the condition of its facilities, major facilities assets. Land improvements were assessed based on the age of the land improvement. Overall, the township is aiming to maintain levels of service where their facility and land improvement assets are in fair condition, that they have appropriate accessibility features, and that they're suitable to purpose. In completing the assessment, staff identified 5 facilities that had limitations based on those criteria: condition, accessibility, and suitability. And so those have been prioritized as potential projects that would require funding going forward. Of note, the Public Works Garage, it has leaks currently in the roof. It has some insulation issues. Even if there were a long-term project to replace the garage, the opinion among staff was that repairs to the roof and returning that asset to suitable use for its current use would be a priority. And then moving forward with eventual replacement of that asset in the longer term, together with the township office, would be a more sensible long-term goal to strive towards. There are other assets, the dock at Chapman's Landing, the community center, which I believe has been the subject of discussion in recent years, and the boat launch at Makwabi Lake, which were also priorities for capital reinvestment identified. And the last asset class in terms of the 4 major asset classes that the township owns is fleet and equipment. The township owns 1 administration vehicle, a number of fire department vehicles, and a larger number of public works vehicles and equipment. They are distributed in condition from very good to very poor, which is actually very common to see among fleet assets. It's very common to have some assets that are getting older, they're running towards the end of their useful life, whereas you have some assets that are newer considered to be in very good condition. So the distribution of condition for these assets is not uncommon. In fact, it's very common, and you have more assets leaning towards the very good side of the scale. The levels of service aim to maintain fleet and equipment as required to complete the township's duties. Staff identified 2 service limitations where they have to make certain concessions in order to fill gaps in service from the fleet and equipment. One was in Sanding Hillsides, where township staff sometimes have to close down icy roads after freezing rain in order to apply sand to make the road safe again. And then the other was in transport of fire personnel. Overall, township staff have already started making steps towards resolving some of these issues, but overall, fleet and equipment assets, they are expensive. We heard just before I started my presentation about the cost of a new heavy-duty pickup truck, and so just anticipating for the eventual replacement of these assets at their end of life creates the multi-year cost structure that you see across the bottom of the screen here. Increases in cost are simply related to different types of vehicles aging out at that certain point in time. Of course, in all of this, the township will exercise its own discretion and authority and create its own capital budgets to complete actual projects. This is just a forecast, a broad-based picture of what the future needs are going to be and what the financial obligations of the township are. Across the next 10 years, the funding needs are a little bit variable year over year, depending on the types of projects that are called for and completed. Certainly of note on this graph here is bridges and culverts, the light blue across the bottom of the screen. Those major bridge and culvert repair and replacement projects are the major cost drivers in the first few years of the asset management plan. And then the costs are a little bit more evenly distributed across the asset classes based on needs for each asset class in the years that follow. Overall, across the 10-year planning timeframe, the average funding need is estimated to be approximately 1.59 million per year. This is in comparison to past capital additions that the township has been making, which have been averaging 0.69 million per year. So it is a bit of a jump from the overall average. However, it is not a significant increase from the highest amount of additional capital assets that have been acquired by the township over that time period. The township does have reserve funds estimated at 4.35 million, and they have been growing in recent years. If the town's budget surplus were applied to capital projects from 2026 to 2031, those funds may address the needs identified across the asset management plan, except for those projects that are shown as unfunded in the asset management plan and listed in the bottom half of this slide. And it's important to remember that even in years when projects are not required, it's a good practice to continue to reserve funds so that you have funds available when those greater financial needs emerge in the years that come down the road. So certainly some of the projects that I believe you know of, the Hummel Bridge, the Bear Creek Culvert, the Hart Road Culvert, are all major obligations that the township should be considering in terms of what the financial obligations are. And then further down the road in 2035, the opportunity to replace the township office and the public works garage is certainly something that's been presented and considered as a possibility to improve levels of service for those facilities. In terms of next steps, it is still the duty and responsibility of township staff in collaboration with members of council and with your worship to develop capital budgets and complete works as approved every year. So this is not a capital budget. This is just a strategic outlook at what the obligations are going ahead for the community. As part of the regulation for asset management, staff will need to present an annual report to council based on progress relative to the asset management plan. So if projects are getting deferred, activities that are identified are not being completed, or if you're completing things ahead of schedule, it's the responsibility of staff to keep council apprised as to how things are going in comparison to this plan. Of course, this is just a point-in-time view. This is currently how things look in terms of the current conditions of the township's assets. Changes to assets are happening constantly. Anytime you buy something new or an asset is retired, that changes the overall picture. So there is a need to continue monitoring those needs and costs, and overall to continue working to improve the data and asset management capabilities that drive reports like this so that you can support continued planning capacity and the development of future asset management plans according to what's required by the regulation. So I hope that that gave a decent introduction to what the asset management plan is all about. Again, it is a strategic viewpoint. It's intended for information. It's not intended to be an actual requirement. It doesn't put obligations on the township. It's intended to give you the information you need to make sure that you're on track or moving in the right direction as the years go ahead.
Thank you, Benjamin. That was well done. Anybody got any questions, or we've got a lot of reading to do anyhow before we,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead there, Councillor Carty.
My question is, in all of this, do we touch at all on natural asset planning? Natural assets. Sorry, natural assets as in parks and beaches and those like. Where does that fit in our asset management plan?
It is a very good question, if I may, Your Worship. Certainly the requirement under the regulation is to address all of the assets that are within the township's capital asset register. So what we've done so far is we've covered all of the assets that the township has purchased, paid for, and are recorded on the township's books. But it is certainly a good practice to consider natural assets within an asset management plan because they bring a lot of value to the community, and sometimes they also do require a certain amount of management, tree trimming, beach maintenance, different aspects like that. So at this point, the scope of this project didn't cover those natural assets because they aren't included as capitalized assets within the township's financial statements. But it certainly could be an area of growth, and a lot of municipalities are actually doing standalone natural asset management plans, recognizing the value that those assets bring to communities, especially like Nipissing, where you have so much nature.
Okay, well, the reason I brought, in your professional opinion, do you think we should have that in our plan?
It's a good area to consider for, in my professional opinion, to consider for growth. So I would suggest that the township is covering what they're required to cover through this asset management plan. And because it is a compliance issue and there is a compliance deadline in 2025, that this plan does cover what is required in terms of compliance. But as you bring up a very good point, that natural assets are valuable to the community. And so, in that spirit of continuous improvement, in bringing on, additional pieces, as the regulation calls for, and as is best practice in asset management across Ontario, I would say that would be a very good next step for the township to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Any other questions? Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Much better. I appreciate it all. He was fantastic to work with, and he met with everybody in the organization to get input onto the plan. And Chris provided all of the documentation, so the bridge study, the OSO study, and all the budget and capital forecast and capital budget for the last 10 years to feed into the asset management plan. So when you have a chance to look through, maybe you have comments in that to lead back into the study, that we can feed back to Benjamin in that. for any final changes that need to occur for their plan. So please let Chris or I know. That would be great.
And I think Steve's question would be a question for Oscar as well.
Yeah, that certainly would be a great question, and what we could do if we're looking at that, and I can pose that to Benjamin, because that might be something that could be included in the 2026 budget, that it could be an item for asset management to look at what the costing would be, and I can certainly pose that to Benjamin. If we wanted to look at a naturalized asset management plan, what would the costing of that could be, or would be, and a council could consider that when they're doing their 2026 budget deliberations, and look at that to see how that impacts the township.
The whole question is, when they said culverts, does that include driveway culverts, does that only include the big major ones?
10-foot, like a 10-foot structure, a 10-foot culvert is a bridge.
Yeah.
As far as engineering.
Yes.
Because there are assets too, right?
Yes, yes, and Benjamin has all those, and there's
She's
all,
still on, so.
welcome back.
I am still here. I noticed we didn't move on. That's correct. The mayor is correct in that the culverts are considered 3 meters or greater in diameter. But there are also, the township owns and has identified 70 significant cross culverts, so smaller assets that carry water across roadways. And so those are also identified as assets of value in the plan.
Yeah, I just thinking that the driveway culvert should be part of that too, because it is an asset to the town. The homeowner may pay the first one, but then it becomes our responsibility afterwards.
We have 1,800.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, like, if you had a major storm and you lost 30 or 40 or 100 of them, it could quickly come a big expense.
So, yeah. Here's a question regressing back to natural assets. Natural assets recognized, are they recognized by insurance and by the province and all of that for funding or billing purposes? Just throwing that out there.
I think that maintenance of natural assets just as a public works activity, so tree trimming, clearing silt from rivers, things like that, maintaining culverts, those are all typical expenses that a municipality would have to undertake. So, those are certainly within the realm of financial responsibility. And that said, also natural assets, they bring sort of inherent value to the township. So the practice across Canada for natural asset management is getting better. It was fairly new 5 to 6 years ago, but today it's becoming more commonplace. And so, as Kim said, if it's a priority for the township to consider these assets and put a value on them and consider what could enhance that value for members of the community in the long term, then that would be an investment that you would decide to make.
Are we good? Okay. Thank you again, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Have a
I will
good
sign
night.
off this time. Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, we're gonna move on. And I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Curtin. And Councilor Starlight. The 2026 council meeting schedule will be as follows. January 6th, January 27th, February 10th, February 24th, March 10th, March 24th, April 7th, April 21st, May 5th, May 19th, June 9th, June 23rd, July 14th, August 11th, September 1st, September 15th, October 6th, October 20th, November 17th, December 1st, and December 15th. All in favor? And the mover and the seconder. Good. Switch over. We authorize the remainder of the loan for the 2021 tandem truck for $12,789, not included in the 2025 approved budget, be paid in full from Public Works Equipment Reserve and repaid to the reserve on a long-term schedule of 6 months at 3.67 interest rate. All in favor? So before I do this, this is for Good Roads. That is from March 29th till April 1st. So Dan is going to be going to it. Does anybody else want to attend? Okay, yeah, so I'll read it and then Kristen will finish it up. That we authorize Dan McGinnis, Lisa Chalapenko, and James Scott to attend the Good Roads Conference in Toronto on March 29th, 2026 to April 1st, 2026. All in favor? And I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Foote. That we authorize John Paul Negrinati and Kristen Lakenecker to attend the Northeastern Planning Conference in Sudbury on November 13th and 14th, 2025. All in favor?
It's been a while since we had one of those, so. it's good to
Yeah,
get-
it's good to go.
There's a lot of changes that happen.
And I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Scott. Councillor Perky. Whereas an application is being received to purchase municipal land identified as Part 1, Plan 42R-11-490. Now therefore be it resolved that the council declares the said lands being Part 1 of Plan 42R-11-490 to be surplus land for the sole purpose of direct sale to the applicant. And further to that directs the parcel be assessed by a registered appraiser to establish a property valuation. The application be referred to the township solicitor to proceed with the closure and sale of the parcel. All in favor? I need a mover and a seconder. Sir Cliff. Councillor Chalapenko. Be it resolved that this council does approve in principle the application of Rural and Fern Forest to purchase a section of the shore road allowance as indicated on Schedule A of their application located in front of concession 19, part of lot 10, PCL 8582 NS Township of Nipissing, that this resolution is subject to the following conditions. The council shall select an independent search firm specializing in fishery issues and environmental issues to complete and or update an independent investigation and report to determine the geographic limits where development could occur and to ensure compliance to the provincial policy statement. The applicant will be responsible for the payment of all the municipality's administrative, legal accounts, and fish habitat evaluation costs in connection with the procession of this application. That in accordance with the municipality's policy, notice of a copy of the draft plan will be mailed to the adjacent landowners. That resolution R 2010-232 for previous shore road allowance application for the applicant be rescinded. All in favor? Carried. Correspondence. Everybody read their correspondence? Okay, so North Bay OPP Detachment Board 3 meetings held June 23rd, 2025. Township of Edwardsboro Cardinal requests the Government of Ontario to extend the annual Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OSIF, Halton Region public safety requirements to protect our communities. Township of Nipissing Recreation Committee meeting minutes held October 6th, 2025, which we have. Nipissing Township Museum Board of Management meeting held October 1st, 2025, which we had our report on that. So I will read this. Well, actually, I'll get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Perky. Councillor Scott. That we've received the correspondence report as presented. All in favor? I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Chillicothe. And Councillor Foot. That the statement of accounts dated October 6th, 8th, 11th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 2025, totaling $396,601.55 be approved. All in favor? I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor First. This part of our meeting will be closed to the public as authorized by section 239 2E of the Municipal Act 2001-25. Litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. For the purpose of this closed session, council will receive legal opinions regarding an ongoing legal matter. 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Purpose of the closed session, discussion of a complaint received. On, oh, time. Okay.
Might need a battery on it.
It's,
Done?
we can replace it for some, we have to move it actually. That wall has always been something in it, stops time. Not sure.
Ooh,
Okay, we're gonna start recording.